Welcome to Connecting the Dots, a laser-focused, quick-fire interview on food and agriculture, on the economy, with international experts where we seek answers to questions all of us should be asking. I'm Ajay Jakhar, Chairman Bharat Krishik Samaj of Farmers Forum India, a farmers organization in India. Today, I'm delighted to have with us Mr. Christopher Hegadorn, whose work I personally admire. He is the Secretary of the Committee on World for Food Security. In the earlier avatar, as a US diplomat, Chris has served as Director of State's Office of Global Food Security in Rome in various capacities and chaired the group that formed the high-level panel of experts on food and nutrition. Thank you, Chris, for joining us today.
Hey, Jay, it's great to see you. Thank you. Appreciate the chance to talk with you again. I've enjoyed getting to know you over this last few months.
Tell us about the Committee on World Food Security and why its multi-stakeholder inclusive approach is so unique in the United Nations.
Absolutely. AJ, you pointed out I'm the Secretary of the Committee on World Food Security, otherwise known as the CFS. I've been in this role for a little more than 2 years, having previously served, as you noted, as a US diplomat and retired after doing several jobs in the development world, and particularly in Rome on food security, and was involved in the reform not only of the FAO through a long and lengthy process, but also the CFS, which many people are still learning about. We're doing our best to make sure that the word about CFS is spread through the global food security networks and communities. Appreciate your help in doing that as well. But CFS is it's an interesting story. It started in 1974 at the first World Food Summit, and that was prompted by really horrible things that had gone on: mass starvation, famine, including in Bangladesh in 72, 73. And in 74, the world leaders decided they needed to come together and have conversations about food policy to avoid those types of tragedies. And at the time, this was during the height of the Cold War, the information exchanged on what food was being grown, what was the likely output and outputs of crops in key production states like the Soviet Union, the United States, that wasn't being shared. And that the secrecy, all that complexity of global trading markets really needed to be put on the table, and people having the opportunity to exchange information. And that's where the UN, FAO, the Rome agencies became the place to do that. So CFS was created at the same time as IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the beginning of the CGIAR network of researchers, and several other key items within the World Food Security community. That was a very important time. Now, after many years, the CFS chugged along. There was annual meetings, trading information about trade and development and crop production. But there was, in 2009, the member states decided, look, CFS is helpful, it's useful, it's good, but it's not enough. The numbers of hungry and malnourished were going back up towards 1 billion people. And you recall, this was right after the international financial crisis, the food, feed, fiber crisis, and people were really worried that the international system was just not ready to handle such a fundamental question as food and nutrition. So what they did, the members said, look, we have these Rome agencies, we have this committee, but it's not enough to have member states coming together once a year and exchanging information and thinking that that was enough to solve global hunger. So what they did is they insisted that the committee, which was one of the committees, technical committees of the FAO, be brought out of FAO and made a committee that was hosted by by FAO, with shared ownership by the WFP and IFAD. And for the very first time, and this was the group I chaired, we sat down and said, look, we need a high-level panel of experts to give credibility to scientific backing and information, evidence, and data that is, cutting edge, top of its class information. And this high level panel of experts was modeled on what was already in the climate space a scientific backing, the International Panel for Climate Change, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So the HLPE was set up at the time. And the other unique thing, something that hadn't been done up to this point, we invited into CFS civil society, of which you and your members are part. We invited in the private sector. We invited in the researchers like CGIAR. We invited in the global financial institutions like the World Bank. We invited in the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food and others as advisors and participants, all of whom sit at the negotiating table and give advice and give input to our CFS products, which I'll talk about momentarily. So that's a little bit of the history. And CFS is right now at a very key inflection moment. The summit has made us ask very important and serious questions about what CFS role and mandate is. Is it enough? Is it not enough? Is the HLPE doing what it was expected to do? So it's a very important moment. And AJ, thanks for the chance to help educate your audience.
I think so. That's very nice because people will want to, they want to learn on this. The high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition is a science policy interface of CFS, composing of experts in food security and nutrition to facilitate debates and inform policy making of critical and emerging issues. So what are your recent milestones in the last few years? And why I say recent milestones is because there's so many of them. So what is for you the most important milestones?
So look, that 12-year period from 2009, when the CFS was turned into, at the time, it was quite revolutionary for the UN system to be kind of emerged in a way that invited in civil society and private sector and others. And in that 12 years, we've had quite a lot of success. A lot of excellent work has been done, and a key foundation for that work, the voluntary guidelines, the frameworks, the recommendations that we've put out, and I'll talk about some of those key ones, were all grounded upon the research and the evidence that the HLPE put into their reports. And I'd love to make sure that perhaps you're in the chat or that your members and audience are aware of where they can find these reports. So far, the HLPE has produced 16 of them. The last one is on youth and their role in food security and nutrition globally. Report 15 was a synthesis report looking, and this was published last year, it was looking at the build up to 2030, what CFS and its HLPE have produced over the last 12 years, and what should be done to get us to zero hunger and the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 2. But the HLPE is also produced in a few years back, report number 12 on food systems and nutrition. And I know you want to talk a little bit about that. It's an incredibly complex topic. It is the subject of a summit taking place on 23 September. And it goes to the heart of many of the 17 development goals, all about food, all about hunger and nutrition, all at land, gender, youth, many of those SDGs. So the HLPE has done 16 reports. It will be doing another one quite shortly next year. It will be published on data systems and how do we make sure and how do we make sure that policymakers have proper data collection and analysis tools at their disposal. But they've also, the HLPE put out a paper last year at the request of the CFS chair on COVID-19 and its impacts, likely impacts and real impacts on the food security and nutrition of the global community. They were the first to put something out. They acted immediately. They understood that this, as did the CFS chair and secretariat, understood that this is going to be a major issue. It's likely to endanger the food security and nutrition status of millions more, which it has, as evidenced by the SOFI 2021 report. And so the HLP is a lot to be proud of. I consider it one of the jewels in the crown of the CFS. There's a 15-member steering committee which is selected from nominations that come from around the world. So there's a very clear geographic balance, a gender balance, and expertise balance that's really unrivaled in the UN system. The IPCC, which is the one I reference and is compared to, at times in the context of food systems. Do we need that type of massive scientific community? It's a debate worth having. The HLPE has shown its level of credibility, its expert products that it's put out, the transparency of its selection process, which was chaired by the FAO chief scientist. All these things point to the credibility of the HLPE, and its reports speak for themselves. I highly recommend that your audience take a look, particularly at report number 12 on food systems and nutrition, that gives the real clarity and detailed expertise that defines those complex questions that I know you're interested in.
Which takes me to the question that the high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition has done such a wonderful job. Why was the need for a UN Food Systems Summit? I mean, I should be the last person asking this, but that's what the people want to know. And the criticism of the UN Food Systems Summit. What would be your views on that?
Well, this is a complex question, and even sort of understanding where the original ideas came from are debated and disputed. But I think it goes back to the point, the same reason the CFS was reformed, and more people were brought into the conversation. I think people felt that food systems are just so complex that it's not just about the amount of calories produced. There's no straight line between calories produced and the outcomes on human health, on biodiversity and environmental health, and the quality of food produced, right? We can produce plenty of calories, but if it's not of the variety of the micronutrients that we know leads to healthy lives and positive environmental outcomes, then we're not going to achieve the 2030 objectives. We're not going to continue to be able to feed the planet sustainably while at the same time protecting biodiversity and water health, air quality, et cetera. So I think that pressure that has been growing over a number of years. This is not a secret to the CFS, which is why we can commission the HLPE to write their report number 12. This took place back in 2015-16. They wrote the report. The CFS members negotiated the voluntary guidelines that came out in February and were adopted in February. And so this has been a process of sort of global recognition that the trade is not adequately addressing the broader issues of the externalities around food and nutrition and environmental health. The growth of the non-communicable diseases such as cancers and diabetes and all the sort of major health problems, obesity and diabetes, all the things that are costing countries billions and billions of dollars to treat. Really, we're treating the symptoms and not the root cause. And the root causes, I think, the more and more people are coming to recognize are the way we grow food, the way we market food, the way we transport food, the way we price food. And so that is how I think the summit has come about. CFS, I would like to have thought that the summit would build more on CFS and its HLP's products. But we have been supporting the summit. We've been trying to make sure that the CFS voice is heard, that the CFS products are at the center of the summit's outcomes. And we'll see what happens on the 23rd when the Secretary General hosts those summit. But look, the summit is a start, as we've heard from many people. It is we have 9 more years until 2030. And we'll do our best. CFS will continue to push its inclusive model. We believe that countries should be basically setting up food system discussions around the CFS model that's inclusive, that's based on science and evidence, and that has clear links to policy. And I think we can work together with those involved in the summit to do this quite nicely and do it symbiotically.
I will pick up on the point where you talked about the way the food is produced, where it is marketed. It has externalities and it has huge cost on the environment and the people. As a farmers organization, we feel that consolidation in food value chains is a clear and present danger to the planet. The UN Food System Summit maybe did not feel the heat or see it as a big problem. My question is, will CFS study such a topic? Will it come out with one of its outstanding reports on a topic, which as a farmers organization, and I personally think is a key component of a transformation, of a just, successful transformation?
Right, AJ, a very good question. And first of all, we understand very clearly that food security is not going to be addressed adequately unless the people producing our food are part of the conversation, first of all, and part of the solution. And that includes not just people growing food on land, but those people growing food and collecting and producing food from our waterways, both aquatic or both oceans and inland waterways, are first of all recognized as the key to the question at stake, that they are the ones without whom we won't be eating any food, let alone nutritious, healthy, environmentally positive food. So we are definitely clear. We invite farmers and farmer representation into the CFS through its advisory group, through its participation, through our both our annual plenaries and our intersessional events. And we'll see at CFS 49, which takes place 11-14 October this year, we'll have 16 side events, and we'll have farmers groups invited into that conversation as a key component to everything we do. Now, looking back at the 16 reports that you reference, many of those reports do touch on smallholder producers. We frankly are biased in that direction. They're the ones who need the help. They're the ones who are growing our food, yet are the ones who are the hungriest. It makes no sense. How is it we rely on people to produce our food in the cities, and yet we're not listening to their needs, both from inequality sense, from an income sense, from applications and availability of resource and finance. And I stress, more than anything, women farmers are key to this. They produce the majority of the food in developing countries. They're at the heart of family farms. They feed our children. They breastfeed our babies to make sure they start their lives well and healthily. And so we are working right now to produce voluntary guidelines on gender equality and women and girls empowerment. Those will be finished next year. And again, I encourage everyone listening, think of how you can help strengthen women's agency in food production, access to capital, access to education, because they really are at the heart of food production, particularly where it's needed most in the developing South. So
the UN Food System Summit is a very complex process. We have Joachim von Buron and the scientific group. They published 7 principles for evolving food systems. But I don't find them consistent with what the Producers Champion Network is saying, what the Producer Engagement Group is saying, or even what Action Track 3 may be saying on the 23rd for nature positive production. So it's very confusing for what people will believe, which part of it they believe, which part of it they do not believe. Many in the process also feel a little let down that the baton is going to be passed to Rome-based agencies, including the CFS. What is happening? Can you give us some clarity on this? Because the people will want to know. And that's the last question.
I think, AJ, we all want to know. I certainly am not going to speak for the scientific group associated with the summit. They have 29 very competent people handpicked, which is a different process than the way the CFS HLPE has a very clear nomination process that's managed by the chief scientists of the FAO. But look, their work speaks for itself, and your audience can look at what they've produced. In terms of science and evidence as a key to policy process and policy making, we do have common cause. We want to support the notion that science should be at the basis, science and evidence should be at the basis of policy making. And this goes back to the point I made about the CFS producing first an HLP report and later policy recommendations on data collection and policymaking tools. Because if we've talked to experts and they point out time and time again how many countries are making policy decisions without a clear evidentiary base, without scientific basis, and this is a clear weakness. And so there are lots of sensitivities over data and how it's used, and those are the issues that we will be addressing in our process. But the bottom line for us is science has to be strengthened. It has to be relied upon. And there are those who will say science is great when they're talking about GMOs and certain things that are have an interest to whatever groups they come from, but then question the science around the climate change. It makes no sense. There has to be clear clarity that science has to be objective. It has to be unquestioned, that it's not coming from sources who are just pushing their own agendas. So look, we are going to continue working with those who have been in the science group and throughout the CGIAR, for example, which is the network of scientific research groups that are advising the CFS. But we think more can be done at regional level, maybe working with groups like the Africa Union, and again, at country level. Country policymakers need to understand that science has to be at the part of science, and evidence has to be clear, a clear foundation from which their policies are set. So it's a complex thing. Like I said, I don't speak for anybody apart from myself or the CFS Secretariat. But we always see room for improvement. There's no system is perfect. No UN agency or organization is perfect. Far from it. We see this as an opportunity to examine how we do things, and question how we can do things better. But again, we are a member state led organization. The UN system organizes itself agency by agency and under the rubric of the Secretary General. And they're always reinventing how they do business. This recognition that food systems is a lens that helps organize their efforts and avoid stovepiping, we call it, avoid those sort of narrow-minded, myopic approaches. We now know that food production has to be linked to human health, has to be linked to environment, has to be linked to water, land, etc. So I point you all, the complexities of this food system approach are captured very well in the CFS HLP report number 12, and the voluntary guidelines that we negotiated and adopted on 10 February this year are really a gift, I think, to this summit process, because it lays out all the complex issues in 7 different buckets, everything from food production to social safety nets to emergencies, how food security and nutrition should be addressed. And so I hope that is seen for the value that I know it offers to the summit and everybody interested in this conversation.
Christopher, thank you for this interview. I want to end by, because when you have hope in someone, you appeal to that person. So I'm going to appeal to the Secretariat of CFS to really take up this issue of looking at the food systems through a lens of food value chain consolidation. And I think this is something that FAO is also not acknowledging. This has been done on Connecting the Dots interview. They very clearly said it's not a problem. So I would want to leave that thought with you, to the member states, to your advisory board to look at it. Thank you, Christopher. I really appreciate it, and we're grateful that you joined today. Thank you so much.
Well, AJ, thank you, and appreciate all the time and effort you've put into the summit action track, which you've been working on. But we'll continue the relationship, and obviously your audience will have a big impact on their local communities. And we ask you and them to look to CFS and its products to help shape the way you support your communities. So thank you again. Take care.
Thank you.